Hello everybody and welcome to Fishing Live. Today I'm on the glorious River Trent, not too far from a little village called Holme in Nottinghamshire. It's a lovely, crisp, I suppose you'd call it early winter's day. Bright start this morning, blue skies, frost on the ground, mist coming off the river. It was just the most wonderful morning to be on the bank. As you can see, it's now clouded over, a little bit overcast, we might even get a drop of rain later, but I'm not too bothered. We've got a fish in the net, and I think as we move towards late afternoon and into the early evening, there's a chance we'll get a couple more as well. So why am I on the river today? Well, I'm going to tell you all about that, and then I'm going to give you a fishing forecast for this weekend and a little bit beyond, which might just give you cause to go out and do some of this sort of fishing yourself. So the reason I'm here, well, at this time of year I love targeting big river fish. Now, in the summer, targeting fish like big chub, big bream, big barbel can sometimes be a little bit problematic if there's big shoals of other fish like roach and dace and bleak. Sometimes you can't get a bait down and you have to fish with really big, horrible, hard baits to get through those small fish and target the big ones. This time of year, what you tend to find happens is the small fish ball up and move away to haunts, and no doubt in coming weeks we'll have a day on a marina somewhere, or maybe on a deeper stretch in a town somewhere, catching some small roach and dace. But what that also means is the stretches out of town in the country can be targeted for big fish much more easily if you know where you're going, know what to look for, shall we say. This stretch I'm on today at Holme Marsh is owned by Worksop and District. You can buy it on a book for just 25, I think it is, £25 a year. That's all it is to fish here. And there's loads of stretches of the Trent, the Severn, the Wye, just like this, where you can buy a permit for a year and have access to big expanses of water. On this stretch alone here, I think there's a couple of 3 miles of river that you can go at, so it really is great value for money. And I buy a permit, as a matter of fact, just so at this time of year I can come and do this style of fishing. So how do you know where to go? Well, most places anglers are forthcoming with information, and that's certainly how I got to know about this place. If you can walk along the stretch of water you fancy targeting, talk to anglers, look where anglers are fishing. Even if they don't tell you everything, they'll give a lot away, just where the bivvies are set up, where the barbel anglers are fishing. That'll tell you where there's a chance of getting some fish. Talk to them, talk to your local tackle shops, they'll often put you right. At the end of the day, they want you to catch fish and they want you to go back in and buy more tackle and bait. So always start local and just do a bit of groundwork on the venue. The peg I'm on today, I know, has got great form for barbel, chub and bream. So it's nice when you've got a multitude of those bigger river species to go at. And it also means you've got more chance of catching something, even if maybe the specific fish you're targeting don't feed. As it stands today, we've got a nice barbel in the net already. It'll be interesting later in the day to see if we catch some bream and chub as well. It's certainly come a little bit milder, so there's every chance, I'd say. So what do you have to look for, or what do you look for when going on this sort of venue? Well, I'm going to give you a couple of key pieces of advice that have served me well. Firstly, it's all about the weather forecast. Now, as I've said, I'm going to give you your fishing forecast for the weekend and beyond shortly. But keep a close eye on the weather on the day you're going fishing. If it's been cold in the days leading up to when you're choosing to go fishing, then it's coming warm, there's a great chance you'll catch some barbel and bream. They seem to like that little rise. It doesn't matter how cold it is, even if it's -2 for 4 or 5 days and then it's coming up to 3 or 4 degrees, a rise in temperature seems to really prompt barbel in particular and bream into feeding. Conversely, if it's going to be a drop in temperature, if it's maybe sat at 5 or 6 degrees and then it's going down to 2 or 3 degrees for a few days, I would steer clear of barbel. That's not a bad time to target chub. So there's always something to go at if you've got a big stretch of river like this to have a go at. So today what I've tried to do is really cover all my options. I want to give myself a chance for a barbel, I want to give myself a chance at bream and chub. So it's 2 rods on a rod pod. I've actually set 2 different approaches up to give me the chance of the 2 different species. And I'll explain how and why I've done that now. So on the left hand rod we've got a ground bait feeder attack. Now, on that we've put a volume of Sonia Baits hemp and hallie crush with a few of our Fjuka micros and halibut pellets mixed in with it. And on the hook we've got 2 of our 10mm black Fatboys, and we're fishing those quite a long hook length, probably about 3 foot to start with. We're chucking that straight in front of us. I've had a chuck around with the bomb and I've found a lovely gravel run. It's probably only about 8 foot, 7 or 8 foot deep, but that doesn't matter. I know this fish here and we've caught one already, so that's proof of the pudding. And the beauty of having that run is I'm able to fish 2 lines quite confidently. So in front of me, I'm fishing that ground bait feeder. I fed it quite positively at the start, 6 feederfuls of bait on that, with the idea of pulling a few fish into the area. As we know, shoalfish like bream are greedy. They'll home in on that bait, and there's every chance that'll be where I catch the bream if they want to feed. And of course there's a chance of barbel and chub there as well. That's a positive line. Really, I'd say it's a banker for some bream, could throw up some other fish. The second rod is a little bit different. On that, I've got a 2 ounce bomb, and what I'm doing is I'm chucking that further downstream of where I'm feeding for those bream with that ground bait and pellets and Fjuka micros in the mix. So that's more of a searching rod, and I tend to find a couple of things happen with that one. Either you'll find you catch fish like chub that maybe aren't interested in a pile of bait on certain days and are sat away from it, or that can actually be the rod where you catch your biggest barbel from as well. Today, strangely enough, the barbel I've had up to now came from that rod. So that tells you that maybe the fish at that particular point in the day aren't right on that ground bait. They're not particularly wanting to feed. But because you've put that rod downstream of where you put the volume of bait, you've of course got the benefit of that stream of attraction flowing downstream, that slick, all those lovely attractants, the sensate from the Fjuka, the oils from the hemp and hallie crush are going down in the current, and you're actually, although you're not feeding anything on this lead line and fishing it maybe 10-15 yards downstream of where you put the ground bait, you have still got a stream of attraction going down the peg, and you are still fishing in that on that lead rig. If it was a really tough day, or even like now, you know, where maybe we've gone a couple of hours without a bite, that lead rig can also be used to explore other areas of your peg. For example, today, bang opposite me, I've got a big willow tree that looks absolutely lovely. So as it gets later in the day, if I don't get any more bites on the line I'm fishing, I'll be very inclined to use that rod to explore, chuck a little bit further over, and I've got a feeling that might be where we catch some chub later in the day. So it's a two-pronged approach. Some venues you only allow 1 rod an angler. If that's the case, bring a friend. Luckily I've got David Preston with me today, so we're sharing the rods as it were, and we're going to basically take it in turns to catch what fish come along. Also, it's a lovely social way of fishing this. You can have a bite to eat on the bank. I've had a steak sandwich today, very nice too. And you know, it's not the sort of fishing I do every day, match fishing, where it's frantic and I tend to target venues with a lot of bites, a lot of smaller fish. This is a whole different experience, very relaxing, and to be honest, for a change, I absolutely love it. So what's the weather going to hold this weekend? Well, looking at the long-term forecast going into the weekend, it's starting to go a little bit colder. I'm seeing temperatures of 6 and 7 degrees, I'm afraid. Nighttime temperatures of 2 and 3. Saturday looks rainy, unfortunately. A lot of cloud, a lot of damp weather, especially in the west of the country. The east may be a little bit drier, but it's still showing signs of showers over there. So yeah, not the best weekend in terms of temperatures. Commercial fishing, I think things are going to be hard, folks. I'm not going to lie to you. Start off by feeding nothing if I was you on a snake lake this weekend. Dob a bait up to cover, and then introduce very sparingly some bait as the water starts to warm up during the day. So, you know, maybe start off dobbing and then start to feed a few micros and maybe some 4mm pellets later in the day. If you're going on a river, I think this sort of approach could well score well this weekend. Just be mindful though of what I said. We are seeing a drop in temperature, so it might well be that barbel don't feed this weekend. There's some chub to catch. And by the way, if you want to go small fish fishing this weekend, the rivers are fairly low. If you know those small fish hotspots, like for example Hereford on the Wye or Marsh on the Old Nene, where the fish shoal up, you'll have a lovely day's small fish fishing, because it's still plenty mild enough fish like that to feed very, very well. And lastly, the canals. Well, again, I'd imagine that footfall on the towpath will be minimal this weekend, especially on Saturday with that rain. There'll be very few boaters, there'll be very few people walking up and down the towpath in the rain either, I'd imagine. All I'd say is pick your spot carefully. Head towards somewhere a bit more built up. Some boats, maybe a bridge would be a good place to start. Somewhere a bit more built up where the fish might push into at this time of year to keep away from predation in the rural areas. Approach wise, again, I'd be looking to probably start off feeding very little to get some competition generating in the peg, and then you can always up the ante later in the day. So maybe feed a small ball of bread punch, fish maybe one of our white Fjuka micros over the top, and then prime a hemp line for later. Ping some hemp further out into the canal and look to maybe catch some bigger fish on black micros later. Or if it's big fish you're after, again, temperatures aren't great, but you've still got a good chance, I'd say, of catching some bigger canal fish this weekend. But again, I'd be cautious in terms of feeding. Start off steady, look to build the peg and see what you can catch. However, slightly further ahead, looking into next week, I can see it's warming back up. So if by any chance you've got a couple of days holiday left that you might want to take before Christmas, early next week might be a good time to go fishing. The forecast I've seen says it's getting a bit more milder, 9, 10, 11 degrees. Nice weather, warm, overcast. I think could be a great time to get out on the river and target some big fish. Hope you've enjoyed that, folks. Have a great weekend wherever you're going fishing, and I'll see you next week.